certainly an NBA free agency frenzy, as LeBron James is about to make the fourth pick decision of his career. Kawhi Leonard is back up north. Jaylen Brown is in Philadelphia. Giannis is in Miami. Plus, Dusty May leaves Michigan for the Dallas Mavericks. And AWON and newbie SummerSlam cards are taking form. We'll have LeBron and Josh discuss all this news on all new Disney Championship rings that starts now.
Brandon, I'm telling you what, somebody removed the on and off switch from the NBA trade machine, because this thing is off the rails. It feels like every day there's some news about a superstar or just a star caliber player getting traded. My God, it feels like while we're on the air, something is going to happen. That's honestly what it feels like, from Giannis to LaMelo to Kawhi, and then Jaylen Brown. What is going on here?
Well, I was going to say we're back from vacation after 9 days off, and the NBA has completely decided to finally, for the first time in what feels like over a half decade, have a real free agency period. We're going to break it all down tonight, and we're going to start with decision 4.0 because it was announced before Thursday's show. I think it might have been on Tuesday that LeBron and the Los Angeles Lakers are parting ways. LeBron will not be back in Los Angeles. And now we have the new Miami Heat with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who we will get to, a potential Golden State Warrior team with LeBron, Steph, Draymond, and maybe Anthony Davis, and our Cleveland Cavaliers. And some people are throwing out the Sixers, who we'll get to as well, as the sort of prime destinations for where LeBron will play what sounds like to me, based off the reporting, his last season in the NBA.
Which leads me to believe Cleveland is the favorite. However, I think the Cavs, if they really want to get LeBron, they got to make some type of move, which is why I think people are including Philadelphia now, because they went out and got Jaylen Brown. Again, we'll get to that later in the show, but, the Cavs should be the favorite, but we haven't really done anything. We let Dean Wade walk. We let Keon Ellis walk. We're trying to trade Dennis Schroeder and Max Strus, but I don't know.
From my perspective, it's about two things. If LeBron doesn't care about winning and he wants happiness and he wants to have fun, regardless of how you may feel about it, that spot should be Golden State. But if he wants to have the best shot to go out with a fifth championship, that spot, in my opinion, unequivocally, without a doubt, is here in Cleveland. And the reason I say that is because if LeBron were to go to Miami, he would be going to Giannis Antetokounmpo alongside him. They would be going together as a duo. If he were to go to Philly, Tyrese Maxey is already established there. Joel Embiid is already established there. They just traded for Jaylen Brown. It wouldn't really feel like LeBron's coming there to save the day. We're here in Cleveland. We've already been through the playoff trials with Donovan Mitchell and James Harden and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. LeBron would be viewed as the guy who came back to Cleveland and won them a championship the first time, and then came back to Cleveland and potentially won them a championship the second time. He would get the most credit here in Cleveland if he was able to pull that off, and you would not have to go through the likes of OKC and San Antonio in the Western Conference.
Yeah, but the Eastern Conference has gotten a lot stronger, over the last couple days.
Well, let me ask you this. LeBron goes to the Cavs. Regardless of what moves the other team has made, I think the Cavs are the favorite if they have LeBron on the roster.
No, I'm not going to disrespect the defending champion Knicks like that. I can't put Boston as one of the favorites. Philly's got to be considered one of the favorites.
They got to be considered, but I'm telling you, a starting lineup that would include James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen is the best starting five in the East, period. I don't care what the Knicks can put together. I don't care what Indiana puts, Detroit, Philly, I don't care. Miami, the Cavs would have the best group of five in the East. It doesn't mean that they would win the championship. But as we've seen over the past 2 to 3 years, Boston in 2024, the Knicks in 2026, the West was considered the gauntlet. Yet the Eastern Conference is the team that actually won the championship.
That part is true, yes. Think about this, though, in general. The fact that we are having this conversation about a 41-year-old is crazy.
Well, I was going to say this. The fact that we in Cleveland are having this conversation shows how pathetic the Cavs are. That we are once again on our hands and knees like it's 2014 all over again, begging for a now 42-year-old to come back and save our franchise because our guys couldn't get the job done and embarrassingly got swept by the defending champions.
Okay, 41, 42, whatever. But again, just the fact that he's going into, this is going to be his 24th season, you said, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. The fact that a guy who is going into his 24th season is in his early 40s, and we're having this type of conversation about, is he going to go to Golden State? Is he going to go back to Miami? Is he going to go back to Cleveland? Could he go to Philadelphia? The fact that we are having this type of conversation, that's what really is amazing to me.
And by the way, he broke the all-time scoring record. It feels like just a little bit ago. That was 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, and he's still playing at a high caliber. What I find hilarious, though, is he's leaving the Lakers, yet his son, Bronny James, is still going to be with the Lakers.
As he should. And by the way, I actually think, I really haven't heard anybody talk about this. I think it could be the best thing for Bronny because now he's out of his dad's shadow. He can develop, and JJ Redick's a very good young coach. We've seen what he can do with the Lakers. And by the way, the Lakers, it's not like they don't need young, cheap players that can play because, they got Luka, they got Austin Reeves, and now they have Walker Kessler, but they need to get young players and bench players and wings that they can build around with Luka. We talked about what made that Mavericks team in 2024 so good. It was the fact that not only do they have Kyrie Irving, but they add Biggs and Lively and Gafford that you could build around Luka to hide his defensive efficiencies.
Yeah. I feel like Cleveland would make the most sense. I think LeBron and Donovan Mitchell would work. But do you really think LeBron and James Harden would work well together?
I do because of the passing. I think that would be fantastic to watch them pass. And by the way, I think LeBron will make up for James Harden's deficiencies on defense. Like we have talked about for the last 3 years on this show and other shows. What do the Cavs need, Josh? A wing. What is LeBron? Literally the definition of a wing, of what they need.
Yeah. LeBron and Giannis would be interesting. Miami was able to re-sign Andrew Wiggins, but they lost Norman Powell. So,
see, the Miami one to me is the one that makes no sense because outside of Bam, LeBron, Giannis, Wiggins, and I know they signed Tim Hardaway, but the NBA now, we talked about this so much about depth. It's not about super teams. Miami to me, and I'll get to this in a little bit, even with LeBron, it doesn't move the needle. And like Miami to me is not threatening at all. To me, I am not scared of Miami. It feels like Giannis and Milwaukee at the end all over again.
It depends on what they do when they build out the rest of their roster.
Well, that's my point. They're not going to be able to build out the rest of their roster. Their entire money is being spent on Giannis and Bam Adebayo. So they're gonna have to go bargain basement hunting like they did with Tim Hardaway, who again can be a role player. He was actually on the Dallas team that made the finals a couple years ago, but never a consistent player.
Yeah, I mean, if LeBron wants to just go out and have fun, then yeah, he would go to Golden State because I don't think the Warriors would be title contenders, but you know they would rake in the ratings and they would rake in the money because people would obviously want to see LeBron and Steph play together. We saw what it would look like in the previous Olympics.
Well, and the other thing with the West is if you go to the West, you got to get through not only Oklahoma City, but San Antonio as well. You got to get through both of them potentially. Where in the East, you may only have to get through one of them.
And Minnesota, I'm not.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think very similar to the Celtics, I think the T-Wolves got worse.
Interesting.
I did not like the move off. I mean, we knew they had to give up Julius Randle, but that was for salary cap purposes. I do not like the LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards fit really at all. And giving up Naz Reid, I thought was a mistake. I thought they gave up a lot of size, which was their advantage when they matched up against Denver.
We'll get more into that when we discuss LaMelo later in the show. But
for sure. Speaking of a team that I think might have got fleeced, let's get into the Jaylen Brown deal because I don't know if you heard today from Bill Simmons, but Giannis Antetokounmpo was about to be a Boston Celtic.
Yes.
And it came down to the extension talks, whether it was going to be 2 years or 3 years, and reportedly Boston's front office wouldn't budge on the money they'd give Giannis. So instead, and again, it's also been reported that Jaylen Brown never requested a trade. He never demanded the trade. The Celtics just decided it's time to break up Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And they get back a couple of first-round picks and an old Paul George. Explain this to me.
Think about this. Paul George has now been traded for SGA, and now Jaylen Brown. And there were some other notable players in there as well. Oladipo, he was traded for when Oladipo was actually like good and whatnot with Indiana. He had a moment, but you know.
Was that the OKC trade? Is that what Indiana got back? Was Oladipo?
Yeah.
Okay. My memory on Paul George a little bit fuzzy. The only thing I remember about Paul George is, as you mentioned, he was traded for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If you remember, back in 2019, Kawhi Leonard told LeBron James and Anthony Davis he was going to meet up with them. And turns out he texted them that he was stuck in traffic, where at the same time he was actually meeting with Paul George. Paul George was facilitating his way out of Oklahoma City.
Yes. I had not heard Philadelphia as a destination for Jaylen Brown. I don't know if you did.
Well, no, I mean, nobody would think of it because this is the team that came back on the Celtics down 3-1 in the first round.
And also, they're division rivals.
Well, no one cares about that. I'll be honest with you. No one cares about that.
And they're in the same conference. They see each other 4 times every season.
That, to me, it's like they panicked. And again, I don't understand where this narrative from Boston came from. They had to break up Jaylen Brown and Tatum. I get it. Jaylen Brown has came out. He said this was his favorite year of his career. He made all those Twitch comments, but he never directly said, I want out of Boston. And we know him and Tatum got along. I get it. I think Jaylen Brown was sort of jealous that people were, when Jason Tatum was coming back, that's all anyone would talk about. They wouldn't even talk about the fact that Jaylen Brown was an MVP candidate. There's some report floating around out there that the Celtics analytical department actually believed that Derek White was their best player this year as opposed to Jaylen Brown, which is just wild to me. But the thing is about this move, and I love it for Philadelphia, But there is one drawback to it. If Jaylen Brown really wanted to be the man, he is not the man in this situation. This is clearly not his team. In my opinion, this is Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe going into the futures team, and you'll figure out what to do with Joel Embiid, whether you trade him, whether he plays, whatever. But Jaylen Brown is almost in the exact same situation in Philly that he is in Boston, which is he might be the second best player. Maybe in Philadelphia on some nights he could be the third option, as opposed to a place like Portland where he would be 1B with Damian Lillard, if not 1A, as Lillard sort of is out of his prime, and he's definitely better than John Morant, which we'll get to.
Yeah, Portland was the primary destination I was hearing for Jaylen Brown. And we know the Celtics, this isn't the first time they offered Jaylen Brown in a trade. Obviously, they did that for Giannis, but I heard they also offered Jaylen Brown in a trade package for Kevin Durant a couple seasons ago.
Well, I was going to add Evan Mobley as well. Like, you can't tell me that you wouldn't rather have Evan Mobley, Kevin Durant, or Giannis, and you end up with Paul George?
Yeah, I don't get what the Celtics are doing at all.
And again, last year, the Sixers were like viewed as, oh, they're a great story with Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and if Embiid gets back. And then it was like, oh, yeah, they have old-ass Paul George, too.
Yeah.
Remember when I came on? Remember when the Celtics lost that 3-1 lead to the Sixers, and we did a show that was Saturday night they lost, and Tuesday we did a show. And I said I thought this could be the best thing to happen to the Celtics because it would force them to change their style. Apparently, they didn't want to listen, or apparently they thought Jaylen Brown was the problem when, oh, wait, who played in Game 7? Jaylen Brown, not Jason Tatum, who you are now hitching to that he's not going to have more Achilles or ankle issues down the road because now he's going to be forced to play every single night.
Yes. No, it's interesting you bring up Jason Tatum in that circumstance because teams were also trying to talk to the Celtics about possibly trading for Jason Tatum, and the Celtics shut that down.
Well, and that's interesting because what has been, I'm not going to say a hot debate because we don't really get too angry over it, but I think it's been one of our most disagreements on this show is Jason Tatum's status. And I've always argued that Jaylen Brown is the better player. And I would have, by the way, traded Tatum instead of Jaylen Brown. And also because of the injury history factored in there. But to me, the fact that Boston clearly thinks that Tatum is better than Brown, I even think you questioned that a little bit because you always said it didn't matter. They're very similar players.
Which I still feel that way. And that, I mean, no disrespect to either one of them, but you could just tell.
It's just weird to me that, like, and the argument we had over the championship was I said Jaylen Brown's got the hardware here, so he's clearly better. And you said, no, Tatum did as much to contribute, and arguably Tatum should have been finals MVP, which I can agree with. That Boston has this take of, like, Jaylen Brown essentially didn't do anything for us, and it was all Jason Tatum. It's very weird, which is why I wonder if this whole scenario was all about money, because we know the Celtics have new owners. We saw what happened last year when they made all those moves, and they moved up Porzingis, and they moved up Drew Holiday to sort of save some cap space. Like, I don't know. The Celtics are in a very weird space, and Paul George just feels like it doesn't accelerate their timeline, but it doesn't make sense for their timeline.
So I've looked at the odds for the Eastern Conference since this deal. Boston is still, I think they have the second best odds in the East from what I've read.
Oh, I would disagree with that. We're about to get into our next team. That team, I think, has better odds than the Celtics, I would say.
I think Philly has better odds than the Celtics.
That's fair. I think the thing about Philly is if Embiid's not healthy, what do they have for a big? Because they have no bigs if Embiid's not healthy. And you have to win with bigs in today's NBA.
Yes.
That's the problem with Philly. So to me, if I'm Philly, I'm trying to move Embiid. Now, who wants him? I have no idea. I will credit Nick Wright with this on First Things First today. He floated the idea of what if Golden State, in their attempt to get LeBron back, we know they're going to have to move Jimmy Butler. What if instead of Anthony Davis, they tell Philly, we'll send Butler back to Philly and get Embiid straight up? That's a scenario I could see just to get Embiid out of Philly, because otherwise I don't know who, unless like the Nets, if they want to put Michael Porter, Julius Randle, and Joel Embiid together. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. But Mike Gansey, who's their new GM, he came from Cleveland. He's done a great job with them, and it's a big loss for us, I feel like. But Philly went out and signed Dean Wade for a 4-year contract, I believe it was. So
yeah, and credit to Dean Wade, man. You know, he drove me nuts here in Cleveland. There was a time where I really liked him, and there was a time where I didn't like him at all. But he did go from an undrafted free agent to a 2-way contract to now a big payday in free agency. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a big impact with Philly because
he's got to be able to shoot. That's the thing about him. He was inconsistent here in Cleveland from downtown outside of that game against Boston when he hit like 10 threes in the fourth quarter or something crazy like that a couple years ago. He's going to have to do that in Philly.
Yeah, that's true. I'm curious to see like what they do with the rest of their roster now. Because, like, you can't just rely on VJ and Tyrese and Jaylen. You need pieces around them.
100%. And speaking of pieces around them, the Toronto Raptors went big game hunting. And when I first heard this, I thought this was a joke. Kawhi Leonard, wait a minute. The guy who got traded from San Antonio to Toronto, won a championship in Toronto, then bolted out of there faster than anybody known to man because, as we all know, Kawhi Leonard does not like the cold. And now all of a sudden, after 7 or 8 disappointing years with the Clippers where he himself only made the semifinals, you remember the year they made the conference finals, he was out for that whole playoff run. Kawhi decides, wait, I'm okay with going back to Toronto and pairing up with Scotty Barnes.
The Raptors are legit title contenders. I told you about this team last year, and you called me crazy, and yet they made the playoffs and took the Cavs to a Game 7.
They did, and I'll tell you what, you could really make a case if Brandon Ingram does not get hurt. Do they beat our Cavs?
Yes, I believe they would have won that series if Brandon Ingram doesn't get hurt and actually found some offense.
Well, here's the thing, though. They trade for Kawhi Leonard, who outside of last year notoriously doesn't play in the regular season because his knee hurts.
Yes. Which, by the way, I think Kawhi would have stayed in Toronto if they had traded for Paul George. But
was that on the table? I don't remember that at all.
I think it was. But either way, now you've got Kawhi Leonard paired up with Scotty Barnes, who I believe proved to be a legit all-star caliber player in the playoffs last season. You got Emmanuel Quickly there. RJ Barrett is still there, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
RJ Barrett is still there, and RJ Barrett will drive you crazy because there'll be some games where he looks like Duke RJ Barrett, and there'll be other games where he looks like a show of himself.
Yes. So they did have to give up Grady Dick in the trade, which I don't love because he was a good
but I mean, you can find role players and shooters. For Kawhi Leonard, I think you 100% make that deal.
Oh, 100%. But he was a good outside shooter for them. But they'll find a way to replace him. But Toronto, absolutely. In my opinion, the top 3 in the Eastern Conference right now, New York is number 1. I would put Toronto number 2, and I would put Philly number 3.
And for me, it goes back to that's why the Cavs absolutely need LeBron, because if they don't get LeBron, it's pretty much going to be a rebuild, in my opinion. But yeah, I would somewhat agree with that right now. I think there are still moves to be made, obviously, because I think Detroit is going to try to go big game hunting now. I think they have to. Well, there was rumors out there that they were potentially involved in a Jaylen Brown trade where maybe they wind up with Kevin Durant and Jaylen Brown would have ended up in Houston. But the one thing about this Raptors team that, and again, I think they're going to be very good. I think they're Eastern Conference Finals contenders. But again, the Kawhi Leonard thing has always been, how many games are you going to get out of Kawhi Leonard? Now, I get it. They were the 5th seed without him this year, but they also had Brandon Ingram. If you were to tell me they didn't have to give up Brandon Ingram and it was just some rotational players and picks, then I would have said, oh, you can rest Kawhi for 30 games. He can play 50 games and have him ready for a playoff run. This team, in order to have the best chance to make it to the NBA Finals, Kawhi's going to have to play 65, 70 games because I think Scotty Barnes is a really good player. I don't think he's good enough to carry the Raptors team by himself if something were to happen to Kawhi. That's my one reservation about this.
Like I said, I love this Raptors team. I was on the bandwagon long before you were. I felt like they could be a problem in the East. And again, I proved to be correct. You were wrong about the Chicago Bulls. I still have no idea what the Bulls are doing.
Well, they do have Caleb Wilson now. They are trying to figure it out. They still the ghost of Michael Jordan.
Yay. But no, this Raptors team, remember what brought them to a title? It wasn't just Kawhi. It was Pascal Siakam alongside him. I'm not saying Scotty Barnes.
It was Kyle Lowry as well. I mean, and Fred VanVleet. You can make a real case for VanVleet to be the Finals MVP in that series.
By the way, Kyle Lowry is signing a one-day contract to retire as a Toronto Raptor.
I saw that, and good for what we used to call the baby dinosaurs back in the day when LeBron used to beat them up. But listen, the one thing I also like about this trade is this. This is not Kawhi Leonard's team because Kawhi Leonard, unlike LeBron, we know he's not a vocal leader. Kawhi is going to come in his 90s truck. He's going to come to the game. He's going to be a robot. He's going to make mid-range jumpers, and he's going to go home, and he's probably not going to talk to anyone. But guess what? The Raptors don't care because their leader's already on the team, and Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly and Jakob Poeltl is there. Like, they have guys. Kawhi is in that role that I thought Kevin Durant was going to be in last year when he went to Houston, which was get buckets and play defense.
Yeah. If Kawhi can form that type of partnership with Scotty Barnes that he had with Pascal Siakam in 2019, yeah, the Raptors are absolutely legit.
And now we move to a move that was first pretty much out of all these deals. Giannis Antetokounmpo going from the Milwaukee Bucks to the Miami Heat for basically Tyler Hero, some role players, and some first-round picks. Listen, I think Milwaukee should have made a trade for him 3 years ago. It was over the moment he got hurt in that 2023 first-round series when they just brought in Damian Lillard and they lost to the 8th-seed Miami Heat. And the return they got for him was less than ideal. Obviously, I think they are in full rebuild mode now. But for Miami, and this is the type of thing Pat Riley does. Pat Riley likes to bring in stars, whether it's LeBron or back to Dwayne Wade and Bosh or Jimmy Butler. They've always been competitive, and Eric Spoelstra has been there for a long time. And they say Heat culture is still alive up there. And I get it. Bam Adebayo scored 83 points in a game this past season. But tell me,
he got like 40 free throws in that game.
There you go. Tell me, in what world are the Miami Heat different than the Milwaukee Bucks the last couple of years. Because I don't see any way they're better. I think this is a complete lateral move. When the trade was announced, and again, this was even before the moves of Kawhi and Jaylen Brown, I said, congratulations for being the 5th seed in the East.
I will say, when the Heat made that run to the NBA Finals in 2023, where they eventually lost to the Denver Nuggets, they basically only had Jimmy Butler. They found guys like Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, and others.
Well, Bam Adebayo was a big part of that team as well.
Yes. Okay, fair. But still, it was Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and scraps, basically. A bunch of undrafted guys.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Max Strus did turn into something. Now, Caleb Martin ended up being a scrap. Gabe Vincent ended up being a scrap and not going anywhere. But
when I say a bunch of scraps, like at the time, we didn't know who Max Strus was.
I think out of all the guys, Strus probably had the most potential. But I'll agree to that. That was a very special little once in a lifetime little run there, but that's something the Heat do. Listen, I get it. Miami is closed internationally. They have the culture and all that for Giannis to succeed in. So I understand from that standpoint why he wanted to go there. But Giannis is just wasting his legacy. I'm sorry. I think it is more likely that Giannis Antetokounmpo never wins another playoff series in his career than it is he wins a championship in Miami.
Yeah. Given the way the Eastern Conference is shaping up, it's definitely going to be hard for him to come out of the conference, considering New York are the defending champs. Toronto has gotten better. Philly has gotten better. We'll see what Cleveland does. We'll see what Detroit does. I'm not totally dismissing Boston. Atlanta's in the picture.
Indiana. And by the way, I'll tell you this, I'm totally not dismissing Washington either. They got a real squad.
I don't know what to make of the Wizards, but anyway.
Trae Young, AJ Javante, Anthony Davis. I mean, that's a 7-8 seed. Orlando, we can't forget about them.
Yep. So I like it. You got Giannis, you got Bam. They were able to re-sign Andrew Wiggins. And Miami's going to find a way to, sign some undrafted player, and he'll turn into a key piece of what they do.
Well, that's what they think. They kind of think they're like New England Patriots back in the Bill Belichick dynasty days. Yes, like New England found Julian Edelman, and they found Wes Welker, and they found Malcolm Butler, and the machine just keeps on turning. Well, what happened when Tom Brady left? They died. What has happened since Jimmy Butler left the Heat? And I get Giannis a bigger fish than Jimmy Butler, but Heat culture is not Heat culture anymore. And by the way, Giannis hasn't been healthy the last 3-4 years of his career either. And also, by the way, one more point. Since the Milwaukee Bucks won the 2021 NBA championship, Giannis Antetokounmpo has won a grand total of 8 playoff games.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the equivalent of 2 series. You need 16 to win a championship. He's won 8 the last 5 years.
Dude, I'll tell you what, and I know we've talked about this, that Milwaukee Bucks championship run in 2021 is starting to feel more and more like it was just a one-off.
Oh, and by the way, this will be the controversial take. You have AI, whoever does our StreamYard thing, StreamYard, if you see this, click this, because I'm about to say something not a lot of people are going to agree with. If you turn injuries off, meaning these guys are healthy for the rest of their career, and I'm taking age into account, but I'm just saying if they're both healthy, Kawhi Leonard is a better player in his prime than Giannis Antetokounmpo.
He kind of proved that in 2019 because Toronto went with that wall defense, and it basically stopped Giannis or slowed him down. And on the other end, Milwaukee had no answer for Kawhi.
Listen, I know that Giannis has back-to-back MVPs, and I get it, but Kawhi Leonard in his prime was the best two-way player in basketball, and I said going into the playoffs, Jaylen Brunson was the best player in the Eastern Conference, not even Giannis. You guys may think I'm crazy. You guys may think it's the injuries. I know you all still want to believe in Giannis. I think Giannis has reached his peak as a player. I truly believe that. I think we saw his peak in 2021 when he scored 50 points in Game 6 against the Suns to win that championship. And I don't think we will ever see that player again. And that is the player that, at the very least, will need to carry Miami. And if you have to go through LeBron potentially in the East, whether it is Philly or Cleveland, Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, Jalen Brunson, like Tyrese Halliburton, by the way, like, come on, man. They're not getting out of the. They may win a round. This is a waste of a top player in his career prime. As a basketball fan, we should be upset at this move. That's how bad I think this move is. I think it's the biggest lateral move I've seen in a long time. This would be like in 20. I'm trying to think. I mean, it reminds me sort of when Kawhi went from the Raptors to the Clippers, where it's like, yeah, he went there with Paul George, but that team didn't do anything. It was all a bunch of hype. It was all hype, no action.
Yep, you're right. That Clippers team didn't do anything. Kawhi couldn't stay healthy. Miami, I think they'll find a way to stay competitive. But again, like you said, you got Jaylen Brown, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe in Philly, Kawhi and Sky Barnes in Toronto, the defending champion Knicks.
And again, by the way, Cade Cunningham is going to get better. Indiana's coming back. There is a world where Miami ends up exactly where they have been the last 3 years, in the damn play-in tournament, because they love that play-in tournament with the Hawks and the Magic. It's their favorite place to hang out at.
The Hawks may end up getting better. They may avoid the play-in tournament.
Jalen Johnson is a hell of a. By the way, over the next 5 years, if you ask me who's going to win more in the playoffs, the Hawks or the Heat, I will say Atlanta.
I can buy that. I have heard the Cavs are possibly going to do a sign and trade to get Jonathan Kuminga.
I mean, if you don't get LeBron, I guess. My thing, me and Jalen had a huge argument over this over text because
I know you guys.
I'm not sure if it was in our group chat or if it was just between me and him, because we were going at it almost all night. I personally believe if you are not the 4-3-2-1, if you are not a legitimate NBA contender, I would rather stink than be the 6 or 7 seed and get beaten the second round every year.
I mean, I don't know the next time you're going to have an NBA draft like this that we just had.
I get it because of the anti-tanking rules and I don't want to tank anymore and all that. But what, as the Pacers, until their miracle NBA Finals run last year, as them, what it was like as a fan, and really as Toronto until they got Kawhi in 2019 and LeBron had to leave the East, as them, how it felt like to get their ass beat in the second round every single year. It's not fun. How they felt is how we feel right now, where we're just, as Philadelphia is a perfect example. Every year, this is going to be our year. This is going to be our year. This is going to be our year. And you look up and you're not even in the conference finals.
Ask the Dallas Cowboys. There's a perfect example.
In the NBA, Minnesota is another example. They keep trying to break the wall. I think they're going backwards. We'll talk about them in a minute. But let's talk about Ja Morant. Finally out of Memphis. Could he turn his career around potentially for a Portland team that all of a sudden has got a lot of young pieces?
What do they have, like 8 or 9 guards on this team. What are they doing? I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, they have Damian Lillard, obviously. They have Sharp, they have Scoop. They're gonna have to move some people around, but you got Denny Avdia to build off of. They did have to give him Jeremy Grant. It was a decent score for them. I'm forgetting the name of their center. Is it still Jurkic?
I thought it was Donovan Clingan.
Or Clingan's his name. You're right. So, I mean, they have some pieces. I always thought, and I know you remember me saying this on the air, that John Morant is the most fun player to watch in the NBA. Not the best, just the most fun. If there was one guy outside of maybe LeBron that I would pay to go watch it, maybe this guy, John Morant, because he can jump out of the building. But the problem was with John Morant's antics off the court. On the court, he's turned into a show of himself. He can't even shoot anymore. And it's very similar to the decline of one Russell Westbrook. And I just hope that is not happening to John Morant, because if this doesn't work in Portland, his career's over.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how him and Dame work together in the backcourt, because the Trailblazers have said they're going to start and play together. Which I love that Dame is back in Portland. I never wanted him to leave and go to Milwaukee in the first place. I get why the Bucks did that deal, but still, he should have been a Trailblazer for life.
Now, you may think this is crazy. This guy started his career off as a Seattle Supersonic. It would be relatively close to the Seattle region. If I'm Portland, I give him my young guards, because we know Houston needs one, and I see if I can go get Kevin Durant. And I accelerate the timeline. Durant, Avio, Willard, Ja, because again, what they need is a bucket getter. And at this point, I don't trust Damian Lillard to be healthy for all 82 games. I don't trust John Morant. I need a second scorer outside of Denny Avia. And again, with all these great teams in the West, do you want to slow build this thing? Or do you want to try to jump ahead of a Minnesota, a Houston, a Lakers? Like, to me, you only have guys on a short-term cheap deal for a short period amount of time. You got to maximize your window.
Yeah. I don't think Houston would do that. I think they want, with the now healthy Fred VanVleet, they want to see how this thing goes. But there's another guy on Houston I would try and go and get if I'm Portland. He's a restricted free agent, Tari Eason.
He's a good player. He's a good role player. I don't know if that moves the needle for them. Like, the problem I have for Portland is, like, are you still going to be the 7th seed? And you still have no answer for Victor Wembanyama. And you lost to the Spurs last year when Wemby didn't even play. So how are you going to solve that issue? You got to go get somebody. Who that is, I don't know. But to me, it's not John Morant.
Well, like, they were one of the teams we thought Jaylen Brown was going to go to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you don't get Jaylen Brown, to me, your backup plan is Kevin Durant.
Which I understand. And I think that could be a possibility, but I don't see Houston doing it.
It's a good move for Portland, and what I hope from this is this. Damian Lillard becomes a mentor to John Morant. He cleans his act up, and regardless of what John Morant turns into the basketball player on the court, if he's a disaster and can't play anymore, he's a disaster. But at least the young man may get his life turned around because he's got issues.
Yeah. And from what I understand, Portland and the state of Oregon have a lot stricter laws when it comes to firearms. So I don't think he'll be able.
I mean, you can make a case where he got drafted. Memphis was the worst place for him to go.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think him going to Portland helps that team a lot. Not just on the court, but off the court. You know, their owner, Todd Dundon, he's like, we're not even going to pay for arena upgrades. And the city is like, yes, you are. And of course, he's also the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, who just won the Stanley Cup. So, and they allowed Tiago Splitter to walk. He's now the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. So I don't even know who Mike Nori is their new head coach, but he's on like a 1-year deal with options for the next 2 years. So it's weird how Portland is running things. I don't get it. I really don't get it with the Trailblazers.
With that, let's go to Minnesota because LaMelo Ball has been acquired by the Minnesota Timberwolves. This, of course, comes after on draft night. They give up Julius Randle to Brooklyn. They give up Naz Reid to Charlotte. Charlotte decides that out of Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, and LaMelo Ball, the person they move off of is LaMelo Ball. My guess was that was more of the maturity issues than anything. But for me, and I talked about this very early on in the show, one of Minnesota's strengths was they had Naz Reid, they had Rudy Gobert, they had Julius Randle, they had many bigs that they could throw at a team like Denver, who could bother Nikola Jokic, San Antonio, who could bother Luke Cornette, Wemby. Then obviously now with the DiVincenzo injury, they're missing him. Obviously, Jaden McDaniels is back, but to me, and I get it because they needed another scorer outside of Anthony Edwards, especially because they lost Mike Conley. But you're increasing your offense with LaMelo, but you're also giving up defensively, and you lose a lot of that size inside with not only Randall, but Naz Reid, who a couple of years ago I kept saying, every time you watch Naz Reid, he makes a shot. If you remember in that Game 7 against Denver a couple of years ago, Naz Reid was the one who got that run started in the third quarter. Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns didn't even have great games in that Game 7. So for me, this is a major step back for Minnesota, and I think similar to what the Lakers have done with Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves, where I think the Lakers have wasted 2 years of prime Luka Doncic. I think Minnesota is wasting the prime years of Anthony Edwards, and I've said this before on the show. They remind me of the NFL's version of the Bills with Josh Allen, where the Bills just can't get past Kansas City. At this point, Minnesota built their team to beat Denver. I don't even know if they can do that anymore, and I don't know if they can get past San Antonio or Oklahoma City.
Don't forget, in terms of Charlotte, they also traded Miles Bridges to Phoenix.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, as well for another first-round pick. And Shams Charania acted like that was the biggest trade of all time.
Yeah. I think that pick they got from Phoenix is in like 2033. So some 10-year-old is going to be drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, and he doesn't even know it.
Well, also he's going to be wearing a Phoenix Suns hat. It's going to be a proposed trade to Charlotte because the NBA still doesn't know how to figure that out.
Yeah, I know. I hate the NBA draft in terms of that. It's so stupid. But I actually love this move from Minnesota. Granted, I get what you're saying about them being smaller. But if you go back and watch the last couple seasons, when Anthony Edwards is double teamed, he really doesn't have anybody to pass the ball out to that can make a shot or that can make a defense pay for double teaming Ant. It was basically, okay, double team Ant and you're good. Now you can't do that because LaMelo can certainly shoot. He can be a playmaker. So you double team Ant. Oh, there's LaMelo to make a shot. He's driving to the basket. So in that aspect, I actually think this helps Minnesota.
It helps them in one way, but it hurts them to me in more ways than one. It really hurts their defense. Their defense got significantly worse. And a lot of their offense was turning defense into offense. And I've said this before about Anthony Edwards, and you guys in the comment section can yell at me if you want to. I love Anthony Edwards. I think he could be one of the American faces of the NBA, but he's also a front runner. That when he feels what? Remember that series against Phoenix when Phoenix still had Kevin Durant? The series last year with the Lakers when they had Luka and LeBron. When Anthony Edwards feels like he has control of a series, he can dominate a series. But as we've seen in the Western Conference Finals against Luka's Mavs and then SGA's Thunder, when they lose early and he's down and he doesn't feel like they have a chance, and we saw it this year against San Antonio in Game 6, he quits.
Yeah. I think it was in Game 6 with like 8 minutes left. He knew they didn't have a chance. So he literally walked over to San Antonio's bench and congratulated them.
And what did the Knicks do when they were down 30 in Game 4 to the NBA Finals? They came back and they won that game. So on one hand, I think he has some maturity issues, and I don't know if everybody says, oh, he's got Michael Jordan quantities. I don't see that with him. And I'll tell you something else. LaMelo Ball is not going to be the leader, and I do think, for what it was worth, I know Julius Randle rubbed some feathers wrong, but I think, again, I go back to the Naz Reid thing. I think that is the most, I think he's than Julius Randle. I think he was beloved in that locker room. I think he was a leader. He was the guy that calmed things down. They're not going to be able to replace him. And I think there is a world here where Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball are like what James Harden and Russell Westbrook were back in the day, where they're playing tug of war with the ball, trying to figure out, is it my turn, your turn? Josh, I know you say you love the trade. I think there's a scenario where LaMelo Ball doesn't even finish the season on the T-Wolves because this thing blows up so bad they have to get rid of him at the deadline.
I won't say it's not going to happen, but I would say that scenario is unlikely. By the way, did you see the Timberwolves rebranded again and they kind of went back to their like old colors and stuff?
No, I did not. But again, to me, that does signal potentially a new era here in Minnesota with Ant. I don't know. I think, too, what worries me about this move is I don't care what they say about their father. You know LeVar Ball is going to chip in at some point about LaMelo. And, again, Charlotte had 3 very good young players. Con Knipple, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller. They could have easily built a little bit of a big 3, build with them, try to contend in the East. They're going to get better, and they decide to move on from LaMelo Ball very quickly.
Like I said, they also traded Miles Bridges.
Yes, but Miles, similar to Mikal, he's more of a role player, where LaMelo was viewed as their franchise. He was their big investment. They had 3 top 5 picks, LaMelo, Ingram, and Knipple. And the fact that they move on from LaMelo that quickly and they get back role players shows that they were concerned about his maturity to lead the team long term.
Which it's crazy that Charlotte made this move because they almost made the playoffs. They got into the play-in tournament. They ended up winning that crazy game against Miami. Yes, they ended up getting destroyed by Orlando, but it still looked like they were building something. They had a core, and then they go out and blow it all up. And it's
that's my point. That's why for Minnesota, I'd be very weary about this. And combine that with the Julius Randle trade, they lost most of their size. And so what their strength was turning defense into offense. Like, this team now is fundamentally different. And I think it's worse. I know you think it's better. I think it's worse.
No, I understand what you're saying about the size aspect. I'm not disagreeing with you about that. That's not what I'm saying. But at the same time, yes, it helps to have size, but New York just showed you, like, you can win with a smaller guard.
You can, but guess who arguably won them that series? It wasn't Jalen Brunson. It wasn't Cad. It wasn't OG Anunoby. It was Mitchell Robinson because he could bang with Wemby.
Which Mitchell Robinson is now with the Boston Celtics.
Yes, he is, and that was the best move the Celtics made. He will contribute more than Paul George will.
Except he'll be afraid to shoot free throws.
that. All right, well, speaking of being on the move, this one kind of came out of nowhere. Dusty May, the national champion last year with a very good Michigan team. I think they had 3 first-round picks, including one by the Mavericks. But this one to me was like kind of, really? You're going to leave Michigan and the dominance that you could have in the NIL to go to Dallas? And to me, it does show the star power of the Cooper flag. I know a lot of people want to compare this to when John Beilein went to the Cavs in 2018, 2019, because they're both Michigan coaches. But this is completely different because John Beilein didn't have a star. Dusty May does, and he's got 2, as reportedly they're going to want to keep Kyrie Irving. And to me, the NBA game and college game now are very different. I get it with all the 3-point shooting. But this guy's been a winner everywhere he goes. He's the one that coached the Florida Gulf Coast team to the Final Four way back when they were a Cinderella. So it's not like he's always been
I think it was Florida Atlantic.
Or Florida Atlantic, thank you. You know, it's not like he's been just a big school. He's had a lot of experience. So to me, I don't know what to make of this. Depending on how you feel about Billy Donovan, I think he sort of worked with the Bulls. He did what he could with that roster and just kept trying to get in the playing tournament every single year. And listen, the West is very tough, as we talked about, but this Mavericks team should be right in the mix as well.
Yeah. What this says to me more is not about Dusty May going to the Mavericks. It's him leaving Michigan because of what you just said. NIL. From what I was hearing on like ESPN and some of the others, as soon as they won the championship, Dusty May was trying to retain most of his roster. He was out going recruiting, trying to get players in the transfer portal and whatnot. Why do you think Jay Wright stepped away when he did? Bill Self has become very year to year with Kansas. Tony Bennett, I think is his name, with Virginia. I think
Coach K's the big one that stepped down because of NIL and all that with Duke.
Yes, exactly. NIL has drastically changed college basketball. You don't know what your roster is going to look like year to year.
Not only that, look at like college football. Chip didn't work out, but Chip Kelly went from being the offensive coordinator at Ohio State to being the offensive coordinator there at the Raiders because he just didn't want to deal with college anymore.
Exactly.
You know, and Jeff Affleck goes from being the head coach at Boston College as being a coordinator with the Packers. Now, obviously, he's head coach of the Dolphins. But college sports now has turned into a 365-day job. And because of NIL and the transfer portal, and because the timing is so weird, because it happened during the season and immediately after the season in college basketball, it is harder, I would argue, to be a college coach than it is a professional coach. Because
that's exactly what I'm saying. Like I said, as soon as Michigan won the title, he was trying to recruit. He was trying to keep his roster intact.
You don't even have time to celebrate. I mean, you may have 24 hours, if that. It's like, we won the championship. Yay. Hey, how much money do you want?
Exactly. Again, you don't know if you're going to have the same team that you did the year prior. So it makes total sense that he went to the NBA, and it makes sense that he went to Dallas because, yeah, he wants to coach Cooper Flag. Honestly, this doesn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me if we see more coaches from college basketball come to the NBA. It really wouldn't.
What's going to be interesting to me about Dallas is, as I mentioned, what do they decide to do with Kyrie? Because I thought all along that you use Kyrie as a trade piece, trade chip, similar to what they did with Anthony Davis. But it sounds like, to me, they're going to keep him.
Are they going to keep Klay Thompson? That's my question.
I totally forgot that Klay was in Dallas. I mean, if you want to send him to Golden State for a little reunion, fine. I don't care. I know me and you have argued about this. I think Klay is way past prime. I think Klay is almost like Dwayne Wade at the end with the Bulls, where he's just like sitting on the bench and he's just not the same player.
Clay's always going to be one of my all-time favorites. When he was healthy and he was knocking down shots and locking up the opposing team's best player, it was so much fun to watch him, man.
Well, what killed him is, and I'm sorry, I can't recall if it's the Achilles or the ACL. I think it was the Achilles. He tore him back to back.
Yeah. And he just lost that the gift of the great shooting that he had.
Well, you never lose shooting. What he lost was his legs. He doesn't have the leg strength anymore.
That's what I meant in terms of the shooting aspect.
For sure. And then defensively, he can't sit in the chair anymore, so he's not the same player. So I don't see the value with him there.
Yeah. And you still have PJ Washington there. He's a player I would love to see the Cavs try and go out and get him. He's the type
for sure. He's the type of player that they need in another wing. You know, it's funny, Josh. Remember a couple years ago, I know you remember this. It was the night of the Royal Rumble 2025. It happened about 1 o'clock in the morning. We all thought it was fake news. The trade came down. Luka Doncic has been traded for Anthony Davis. We all made fun of Nico Harrison, and we all said he was the worst general manager of all time, and they were chanting, fire Nico and all that. I hate to tell you this. And again, they had to get Cooper Flagg. That was the key to this whole trade. Is they tanked. Remember, they were in the play-in tournament as the 10th seed. They won their first game, and they lost that second game. I think it was actually to Memphis. They lost by like 50. But it enabled them to get Cooper Flagg. I actually think if you look long and hard now for the next decade, I think Cooper Flagg over Luka, 100%. There is a world where this trade works out better for Dallas than it does the Lakers.
I'm not ready to go that far yet. But in terms of that, Brad Stevens might end up looking worse than Nico Harrison for the trade he made with Philadelphia for Jaylen Brown.
That's actually a good discussion that we may have at some point this offseason.
Which, by the way, Brad Stevens came from the college game, and I thought he did a very good job as the coach of the Celtics.
He did. He's been a good coach. Up until Tuesday, I thought he was a great executive.
Yeah. Didn't he win Executive of the Year?
The year they won the championship, I think he did.
So, college coaches, generally, when they come to the NBA, they have success. They do.
Well, the NBA is testing out a new rule that apparently has been in the G League since the 2019-2020 season that I've never even heard of. But it is this one free throw rule, which is essentially up until the last 2 minutes of fourth quarter, and if the game goes overtime, this wouldn't apply in overtime. If you get fouled, so if you get fouled on a 2-point shot, you would shoot one free throw instead of two, with that free throw being worth 2 points.
Yeah. And if you get fouled on a 3-point shot, you would take one free throw worth 3 points.
Correct. And the whole point of this, I guess, is sort of like baseball to quote unquote speed up the game. Though, here's the issue. In baseball, there was a real issue with game time. Games were going 3.5, 4 hours. Now they're down to 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes. In basketball, the issue with game time is the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yep. Because it seems like there's stoppages like every 30 seconds.
Correct. For intentional fouling. And again, Josh, I know I've ranted on this probably more than anything over the last 6 months. I don't know how people aren't seeing that Adam Silver is a delusional commissioner. He is the worst commissioner right now in all of sports. I don't care what anybody says. You can make an argument with the WNBA commissioner who doesn't even care about her star that saved the sport. But Adam Silver is destroying everything good about the NBA. You know why this week in the NBA has been so fun? Because guys are actually on the move. But you know what? They used to be on the move every year because of free agency. Now they have to get traded for the most part. And I'm sorry, free agency is a lot more fun than trades. And whether Adam Silver likes it or not, this is the God's truth. We like talking more about the NBA offseason than we do talking about the NBA regular season. So they're trying to create this rule. Oh, yeah, this is going to help speed up the game. If you look really hard at the NBA, what decides games? The difference in the amount of free throws you make per game versus your opponent. If you make 9 free throws and your other opponent only makes 2, you often win the game by 7 points.
And again, we talked about Bam Adebayo earlier in the show. Why did people discredit his 83-point game? Because he took 40 free throws.
Yes. And also, by the way, and I know it's the third quarter, or excuse me, I know it's not. I know the last 2 minutes is always clutch. But if you're in the third quarter and you're trying to make a comeback, nothing kills that comeback more than the second missed free throw. It will change outcomes of games.
It really will.
If they get this implemented, the NBA, and again, I do not like to use these radical terms, but the NBA is turning woke. The NBA is doing the opposite of baseball. The NBA is not helping their fans. Baseball's concern was, we're going to drive away our diehard fans. Actually, you're not. The ratings are up. The NBA, you are going to drive away fans like me with these stupid, radical changes that don't need to be changed. This is not the issue. Tanking is not the issue. The issue is when stars like Wemby, for example, only play an Eastern Conference team once a year, and let's say he goes to Boston, and all of a sudden, oh, my knee hurts, I don't want to play tonight. And then you don't see him for the rest of the goddamn year.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, oh, load management. You know what happens? Oh, my tooth fell out. Guess what? I'm still going to play, and I'm an NHL player. Like,
well, you know what else is crazy, too? Why is the NBA the sport of analytics? Baseball is the sport of analytics, not basketball. The Celtics lost. They blew the 3-1 lead to the Sixers because they shot too many threes. That's the problem. And the Celtics say, no, actually, our problem is Jaylen Brown. Why is the NBA tone deaf to their own issues? Like teams, owners, what happened to this league? And we used to all think that David Stern was a terrible commissioner, and God rest his soul, rest in peace, David Stern. Back in my day when I was a kid and I was innocent, I didn't know anything, I would pray for when Adam Silver took over the league from David Stern, because I was always taught by the media David Stern is this evil monster that vetoed the Chris Paul to the Lakers trade. No, actually, David Stern saved the league. If it wasn't for him putting games on television and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, the NBA in the 70s was on tape delay. So, yeah. I mean, come on. What are we doing?
Yeah, this rule doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't change my mind in any way.
And by the way, you're going to try it out in the summer league. It's different than minor league baseball. Like they always say, you know, in minor league baseball, the pitching's a lot different than it is in major league baseball. Fine. The kids are developing their learning. A lot of them do actually get called up and make the MLB roster. In the NBA, outside of a few, how many of these second-round picks aren't even going to make the NBA team because they're terrible shooters?
Yeah, in that regard, I think the summer league is a little bit pointless and stupid because most of these guys aren't going to be in the NBA. But, you know.
No, I know some people that love the summer league, and God bless you because you love basketball. And I get it to some extent. I do not understand the point of this rule. And this may be an all-time championship rings ran from yours truly. This is just dumb. Like, this is just, who thought of this? And
I I honestly don't know.
The fact that this, well, what I want to know is this, because reportedly this has been going on in the G League for years, and I never have heard of it. So give me the data on what it's done in the G League. What is the time of game in the G League to the time of game in the NBA? Is there a real difference? Because if there is, then you can talk me into it.
I don't have that information, so I can't do that.
All right, well, our last topic of the night. Both AEW and WWE are setting up for long-term shows. I know AEW has a pay-per-view redemption at the end of July. I know WWE has Saturday night's main event in the home of the 2026 NBA champion New York Knicks in July. But both companies are setting up for SummerSlam and All In. Both are presenting massive matches for these massive shows.
Yes, we already have 3 confirmed matches for SummerSlam. It's going to be Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship. Obafemi is seemingly giving up his title shot that he won in the King of the Ring tournament to face Brock Lesnar in Hell in a Cell. And we got Liv Morgan facing Io Sky for the, I get so confused with these 2 titles. I think it's the Women's World Championship.
For the Women's World Championship. Rhea Ripley as the Women's Championship for now. Though, to me, Io picked Liv because Rhea Ripley is not healthy, and they're going to have to potentially strip Rhea the Women's Championship. That's what I got out of it. Because otherwise, running Io versus Liv again makes no sense.
Which, from what I heard, Sami Zayn is unfortunately not going to have the title for long. From what I heard, he's going to drop it to Brock Lesnar at that Sunday night's main event show at Madison Square Garden.
Well, no, that's just Saturday. The Sunday main event is in Atlanta. That's Labor Day weekend. That's the week of All Out. Is that the week of All Out? Does AEW have it there on Labor Day this weekend?
I think so. AEW hasn't announced anything with All Out yet. So I don't know where it's going to be or when it's going to be.
Well, the rumor is that Cody Rhodes defeats Jey Uso tomorrow night on SmackDown, and they're running Cody versus Sammy back on Raw for the title in Chicago, which, as we know right now, is the home of one Phil Brooks. What I would like to happen, let's put it this way, what I hope doesn't happen is they hotshot the belt back to Cody and they do Cody versus Punk for the title. Because I don't think it needs the title. I think you could very easily have CM Punk cost Cody Rhodes the Undisputed Championship. Sami Zayn can move on. I know it may sound crazy, but Sami Zayn and Johnny Gargano could be a SummerSlam match for the Undisputed WWE Championship. And you could have Punk and Cody in a solo match. Either way, you're going to have Punk and Cody, Roman and Seth in the final match, potentially for both of them going one-on-one, and Obafemi Brock Lesnar inside Hell in a Cell. That, to me, is making up for you screwing Minneapolis out of WrestleMania 41.
I'm on the flip side, though. I am loving what is happening with AEW. My God, Forbidden Door, that was one of the greatest pay-per-views I have ever seen.
You guys say that about every single, I swear, every single AEW pay-per-view, every single AEW fan says, that was the greatest pay-per-view ever. They can't all be the greatest pay-per-view you've ever seen.
No, I don't do that. I'm not that type of fan.
Dave Meltzer does, by the way. If you pay attention to Dave, every single show, he has said Dynamite was the best Dynamite he's ever seen for the past 2 months. Every single week.
Well, next week's episode of Dynamite, which is also known as Beach Break, is going to be freaking nuts because it's Kenny Omega versus MJF for the World Championship, and the stipulation is in place that if Kenny loses, he can never challenge for the title again.
So they're doing the Cody Rhodes thing.
And what happened with Hangman, which I
think
they
did it with Hangman too? When did they do it with Hangman?
At Revolution earlier this year.
Oh, they did it. Wait, that Texas Death Match against MJF, that was the stipulation to it?
Yes, it was.
So why? Okay. I understand the stipulation. I'm like, as long as this guy is champion, you can't challenge for the title. But then never challenging for the title ever again handicaps you.
I love it. But not only that, we've got Tommaso Ciampa versus Chris Jericho going down next week, which that feud has been really good. We got freaking Kyle Fletcher against Konosuke Takeshita for the International Championship, which I thought that match was going to happen at Redemption. I thought Kenny Omega versus MJF was going to happen at Redemption. So now I'm all confused. The main event at All In may end up being a freaking triple threat match of MJF versus Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. AEW's got me so confused, but in the best way possible. I wasn't even able to watch Dynamite last night because I was watching USA versus Bosnia in the World Cup. You better believe I'm going to go back and watch it because from everything I heard, it was fantastic. And for sure, I'm watching next week's episode. There is no way I'm missing that episode. Which I can't say that for SmackDown. One, because it was pre-taped, so I can just go on social media and look at what happened. So that kind of takes the steam out of it for me. But SmackDown, I don't really. I watch it, but I don't really. There's not really that one story that I'm like, oh my God, I got to see that.
I agree. I actually agree. Now, SmackDown may change when it goes back to 2 hours. SmackDown should never be 3 hours. I have been on that forever. 3-hour wrestling shows do not work, in my opinion, anymore for any company unless you're running a big pay-per-view or a big PLE. It's just too much television. I actually think Raw 2.5 hours is like the perfect sort of mix of like too short versus too long. So I'm hoping that with an hour less, they can actually get some focus and there's less filler there on SmackDown. But if Sami Zayn does lose the Undisputed Championship on Raw in Chicago, then they absolutely hot-shotted it just for the Saudi Arabia crowd, which is not the right decision. And let me also address this about Oba Femi and King of the Ring. I get why they did it, because you want Oba to look strong, and they were going to get to Oba Brock Lesnar anyway. But when I really started to think about it, couldn't you have just had Brock Lesnar interfere in the first Fatal 4-Way and not let Oba Femi get pinned and let Seth Rollins go on to face? And I think they might have been in the same Fatal 4-Way, but maybe you change up the participants. And to me, you make Jay versus Seth Rollins be the final, and Seth Rollins can then beat Jey Uso to get his last match with the tribal chief out of the table, Jey Uso's cousin, Roman Reigns. To me, that would have made a lot more sense. And I get it. The reason why you put the King of the Ring on Oba is so it's his own achievement. He looks strong. I get it. I just think logically speaking, it would have made more sense to have Seth Rollins win the King of the Ring, something he's never done.
Yes. I want Sammy to have a long title reign. I've loved this character with Sammy of the last real good guy, and my ride or die fans, which I believe I consider myself to be one of them.
And the thing, there's so many things you could do with Sammy. And I'll say this, if you get the title off Trick, the U.S. Championship, who's not to say they could run this back as a world title feud?
Yes.
Sammy and Trick.
I feel like at some point you got to do the feud between Sammy and Jay for the title, given their
that was my original thought, was Brock was going to screw Oba out of the final. Jay was going to win King of the Ring. Sammy, I did predict Sammy was going to win the Undisputed Championship. I did call that. I didn't know. I said, I don't know how it was going to happen, but I thought Sammy was going to walk on the Night of Champions and face Jey Uso at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. Now I think they're going to do Jey Uso versus LA Knight to sort of conclude that feud. They have the problem is Roman Reigns only has so much time, and there's so many feuds you could do with Roman. Seth is one of them. Oba is one of them. I still think LA Knight and Roman need to run it back one more time. LA Knight's been talking so much shit about Roman that Roman needs to prove that he can beat LA Knight on his own, which that is the difference between this Roman Reigns and the heel Roman Reigns. Is Roman Reigns has not had any interference in any of his matches since he came back. And the story that they are going to tell here is Roman Reigns has never defeated Seth Rollins in a one-on-one match for the World Championship.
Yeah, because I remember when during their match at the Royal Rumble,
I was just about to bring that up. Royal Rumble 2022, it ended in disqualification. We never got that rematch that we thought was going to happen. We thought maybe it was going to happen at WrestleMania that year.
Yeah. And I loved that feud, especially because if you remember at the start of that match, how did Seth do his entrance? Under the shield. Yes.
Here's for SummerSlam, I would not do it again. I've been thinking about it. I think it would just feel too much like a rehash, like the Rumble match. I think you got to make this thing separate. You don't have to make it about the Shield. I think you can simply make this match about the fact that Roman's never beat Seth, yes, but this is about Seth Rollins as a babyface, Roman Reigns as a babyface, and Seth Rollins never losing that World Heavyweight Championship that he had to give up because the Vision attacked him. And now that he's got the Vision behind him, which was, I thought, one of the best one-on-one steel cage matches I've seen in a while, by the way, because they did not try to do the chicken heel shit with Braun Breaker where he immediately tried to escape the cage. It was a real physical, dirty fight that ended by pinfall that would make Jesse Ventura very proud because we all know he doesn't like escaping by the cage.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't like about that match is like Seth kicking out of the spear basically every damn time. I did not like that.
Well, the second one, I thought it was it. I thought Breaker was going to win. And then, well, if you don't like that, then I would argue you also should not like, and I didn't love it either, Breaker kicking out of when they did the Buckle Bomb Pedigree Stomp. Breaker kicks out, and then they did the final stomp. I didn't like the first kick out.
It was a little weird, the amount of finishers that were kicked out of.
Well, I like the fact that they made it very clear this is a steel cage match, but it doesn't mean that we're escaping. I don't think I've ever recalled WWE doing that. Because again, usually it's the chicken heel trying to escape the cage. That was not the case in this match.
Yeah. So I think both cards are going to be really good. I would like to see AEW not do Wembley next year. You know, they did really well when they ran All In at the Rangers Stadium in Texas last year. I understand why they went back to Wembley this year, but maybe next year do it somewhere else. Do it in LA, New Orleans, Minnesota. I don't know.
Maybe like a Boston, like a Fenway Park or a Yankee Stadium, somewhere like a baseball stadium where it's outside in the summer. Because originally, like I thought Double or Nothing used to be their WrestleMania. Then it was sort of All Out. Now I think for sure All In is going to be their version of WrestleMania.
Oh, for 100%. 100% it is.
Well, what'll be interesting is if Tony decides to run something next April in the States, maybe even in New Orleans, when WWE goes to Saudi.
I think Tony, if he really wants to stick it to WWE, he should run some type of show or something the same weekend as WrestleMania. He should do it.
I mean, again, if you want to claim competition, do so. But, Josh, do you remember when I said going into WrestleMania that WrestleMania sort of felt like a SummerSlam card and that SummerSlam was going to feel more like WrestleMania? I feel that. Like, this card to me does feel like a WrestleMania card. This feels more of a WrestleMania card than WrestleMania did.
Night of Champions kind of felt more like WrestleMania than WrestleMania did.
Well, Clash in Italy, I said Clash in Italy was a better card than WrestleMania. It just was.
Yeah.
Now, was the execution not great on some of them? Sure. Going into it, those were 3 WrestleMania main events.
That's true, yes.
Oh, by the way, real quick, before we go, I looked up what the pace of play and the difference in the NBA G League versus the NBA is. I asked our good friend ChatGPT, so take this with a grain of salt. It says that the G League introduced this rule to shorten game length, reduce downtime, and keep the pace of play moving. The league estimates it cut several minutes off the average game without significantly changing the score. Whether it eventually comes to the NBA is an open question. The G League is often used against potential rule changes. The one free throw rule has been viewed by many as successful in speeding up the games, though some fans and players prefer the traditional format.
Interesting.
So again, it's ChatGPT. Take that with a grain of salt, but we'll see. This has been a phenomenal, mostly basketball, a little bit of wrestling show of championship rings. We'll be back next week to talk more news in the sports world. Maybe we'll have a LeBron decision by then.
I doubt it.
You know what would be the ultimate heel move? We all remember July 4th, 2016, when LeBron joined the Golden State Warriors, or Kevin Durant, 10 years apart. Could LeBron do the same thing?
Aye.
How about 10 years apart, LeBron rejoins the Cavs?
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, what I kind of think by this time next week, we will have our answer. It may happen on our show. Imagine that.
You never know.
But until next time, for Josh Ungar, the host of the Sports Introduction, I am Brandon, was the host of Brandon's World. We hope you all enjoy America's birthday on Saturday, America 250. We love sports. We love you. And with that, we are out of here.
Bye-bye.